Hey friends, it's Megan, and today I thought we would travel back in time to the 1890s, also known as the gay 90s, although that term was coined after the 1890s, and it was mostly about literature at that time. In fact, it's a little deceiving in sound because it was really a time period in the United States of Great Economic Depression. This time period was also known as the Mauve Decade, and that is for pigment of dye that became available that influenced the clothes of the time. Speaking of clothes, I just want to say a quick little disclaimer. For these videos, I'm kind of doing a little costume with my hair and clothes, but I don't have like accurate clothes for the time, so I'm just trying to like fake it till I make it. So my historian friends out there, I know I'm not accurate, but I'm just doing the best I can with what I have. Okay, so for these videos, for this one too, I'm going to pick 10 names for girls and 10 for boys that were pretty popular during the time, not necessarily in the top 10, although I might pull from them, and look at those names and we can see if we think they're usable or not, pick our favorites from those, and then at the end of the video, of course, I will review the names that were in the top 10. So here we go, let's turn into color. Ah, that's better. Now let's look at some of the boys' names that were popular in the 1890s. The first name I have for you is Willie. Willie was number 18. It's currently number 708 in popularity. William has been wildly popular. It was then and it is now. But Willie just on its own I thought was interesting at spot number 18. It's a diminutive of the name William, meaning resolute protection, and it is a slang term in some places as well. It was in the top 100 here until the 1960s, and it has significantly dwindled in numbers the past 30 years. Then I have Oscar. Oscar was number 37. It's now number 178. It's English or Irish in origin, meaning friend or deer, like the animal, D-E-E-R. And I thought I'd include this name because this is a time period when Oscar Wilde was alive and really pretty popular. And the name Oscar was in the top 100 until 1925, and the most popular it's been is number 26 in popularity, and the least popular it was 245. So I thought that's kind of interesting. I haven't met that many Oscars in my lifetime, but maybe some of you have. Then I have Lawrence. Lawrence was number 45. It is now number 471. It's a Latin name meaning from Laurentium, or it means he who wears a laurel wreath. I really think this is a kind of a cool name. I like it for the Little Women reference, and I think Ren, R-E-N, is a cool nickname for Lawrence instead of like Lori or Lore. And Lawrence was in the top 100 until 1971 here, so pretty popular, and it came out of the top 200 just in 1999, and it's steadily been decreasing since then. Like I said, it's number 471, so it's got an old-timey feel, but I do think that Lawrence is super usable. Next I have Guy. Guy was number 76 in the 1890s, now not in the top 100. It's a French name that means guide or leader. I really wanted to include this name mostly because I really don't think I've talked about this name on my channel yet. I've only met one man with this name here, one guy with this name here in the United States. Sorry, that was irresistible. And it was in the top 100 until 1901, and it came out of the top 1000 in 2006. Next is Leslie. Leslie was number 90, not currently in the top 1,000 for men in the country right now. It's a Scottish name that means garden by the pool, and in the 1890s and the early 1900s is when it was most common. Now it is a name that is much more popular for girls. It's been taken over for the girls. It's number 284 for girls in the country right now, and like I said, not in the top 1,000 for boys. It fell out of the top 1,000 for men in this country in 1997. Next up is Dewey. Dewey was number 94. It is now not in the top 1,000 either. And it's kind of just got a fun, like, cute little sound. I can't help but think of Huey, Dewey, and Louie, or even the Dewey Decimal System when I hear this name. It's a Welsh diminutive or variation of the name David, which means beloved, great meaning. Dewey has had some extreme highs and lows in the charts, but has not been in the top 1,000 since 1986. Then I have Everett, a personal favorite of mine. It was number 96 then, it's number 189 now. It's an English variation of a German name that means brave as a wild boar. And like I said, it's a personal favorite. It's in my personal top 10 names that I'd consider naming a future son. I love that ever sound. And it stayed in the top 1,000, but did fall out of fashion from the 1970s to the 1990s. However, it is making a huge comeback. In the last 10 years alone, Everett has gone from number 572 to number 189. So it is definitely on the increase here. Next I have Cecil, or Cecil, depending on how you like to say this name, which was number 100 then, not in the top 1,000 now. It's a Latin name that means blind, so not the best meaning. Once it was actually thought of as being a very masculine, powerful sounding name. And now it has quite an antiquated feel and a little bit like of a dusty sound, if that makes sense to you. It was in the top 100 in the late 1890s through the late 1920s, and it fell out of the top 1,000 in the late 1990s. Then I have Rufus. Rufus was number 126. I don't hear this name too much. Now not in the top 1,000 either. It's a Latin name that means red-headed, and the only thing that I think people might identify this name with is it's popular for canines, for dogs, but also for the musician Rufus Wainwright. It's never been too popular here in the United States. Number 88 was the highest it ever was, and it fell out of the top 1,000 in 1988. And the last name for boys on this list I have is Gilbert. Gilbert was number 133. It is now number 885. It's a German name that means shining pledge. Gilbert Blythe fans, anyone? So I have a soft spot in my heart for this name for Gilbert Blythe in the Anne of Green Gables books. I'd actually love to see this name make a comeback. I think it could happen. The most popular it was number 90, and the least popular Gilbert has been is number 997. So now let's just briefly look at the names that I just talked about for boys and pick our favorites. Be sure to comment your favorites down below. I love to hear what you guys like and if it's different or similar to my taste. Okay, so the names I just talked about were Willie, Oscar, Lawrence, Guy, Leslie, Dewey, Everett, Cecil or Cecil, Rufus, and Gilbert. So I think it's pretty obvious my favorite here is Everett, since I said I'd consider using it for a future son, but I also really like Gilbert. That would be my second favorite choice. Now for the girls' names. The first one I wanted to talk about was Helen. Helen was number 4 in the 1890s. It's now number 409, so it's dropped quite a bit. It's a family name for me. It's a Greek name, and it means bright and shining one, and I think that's a beautiful meaning. And from 1891 to 1935, it was a top 10 name for girls, wildly popular here in the US, and it was in the top 100 just until the 1950s. So it's really just dwindled in the last maybe 60 years or so. Then I have Clara. Clara was number 11. It's now number 131. It's a Latin name that means bright and clear. It has a beautiful meaning. It's a beautiful name. It always reminds me of the little girl in the Nutcracker story. And it's actually coming back into fashion. I know this name is used in a couple of pop culture TV shows and things like that. It was in the top 100 until 1939, and the highest it has been in popularity was number 8, lowest was number 593. I do think this name will crack into the top 100. It's already number 131, and like I said, we're just hearing more and more about it. Then I have Bertha. Bertha was number 12. Can you imagine? Now not in the top 1,000. It's a German name that means bright and famous. It is one of those names that has just been dubbed an old lady name that people just, I think, automatically write off. It was in the top 100 until the 1930s, and it fell out of the top 1,000 in 1985. What do you think of Bertha? Let me know particularly if you like this name. I'd be interested to hear a Bertha fan out there. Then I have Rose. Rose was number 22 then and is now number 224. It's a Latin name for the flower. I've often said, I know on this channel, that if I had to rename myself, Rose is a name that I would consider using. It was in the top 100 until 1960. The lowest that Rose has been in popularity is number 361, and the highest it's been is number 14. It's actually pretty popular as a middle name here in this country, but I think it would make a beautiful first name choice, beautiful middle name choice too, but maybe a little bit more unexpected in that first name spot. Next is Gertrude. Gertrude was number 24 in the 1890s even, and it's now not in the top 1,000. It's German and it means strength of a spear. I have to admit, I love the nickname Gertie. I might have watched E2 too many times, but I think it's super cute. Gertrude has not been in the top 100, or was in the top 100 until 1930, and it fell out of the top 1,000 in 1965. Next is Louise. Louise was number 36 then and not in the top 1,000 now, which kind of surprised me. I thought it would be at least in the top 1,000. It's a feminization of the name Louis or Louis. It means renowned warrior. I could definitely see this name making a comeback. There are so many super cute nicknames that people like that you can get out of Louise, like Lulu, Luli, Lula. I could keep going, but you get the idea. And it fell out of the top 1,000 just in the early 1990s. Next is Josephine. Josephine was number 49 then, number 160 now. It's a French feminization or form of the name Joseph, meaning Jehovah increases. I really like this name because of the Jo March Little Women Association, and I think Josephine has lots of cute nickname potential as well. Joey, Joe, Josie, yeah, lots of cute names you can get from it. And it was in the top 100 just until 1942. It took a dip in the late 1970s through the early 1990s, and it's since been climbing the charts back up. The lowest this name has been in this country is number 498, and it had a high of number 21. Next is Mattie with this spelling, which I thought was interesting. It was number 50 in the 1890s, not in the top 1,000 now, and it's a diminutive for names like Matilda, Martha, Marta, Madeline. It was in the top 200 until the mid-1940s, and then it fell out of the top 1,000 through most of the 1970s, and it kind of came back in, although it didn't really rank very highly, and fell out of the top 1,000 again in 2012. Next is Sadie. Sadie is really interesting. It was number 73 then, and it's number 50 now. It's a diminutive of the name Sarah, meaning princess, and like I said, I think it's interesting. Sadie is more popular now than it has ever been, actually. It was in the top 100 until the late 1990s. It fell out of the top 1,000 in the late 1960s through the early 1970s, but recently it has flown up the charts the last 20 years, and it went from number 119 to number 50 in the last year alone, so look out for a lot of little Sadies soon. And then the last girl's name on this list that I wanted to talk about was Marguerite. Marguerite was number 83 then, and it's not in the top 1,000 now. It's a French variation of the name Margaret, meaning pearl or daisy. I think Marguerite sounds very classy and kind of vintage chic, if you will, and the most popular it was in the 1890s through the 1920s. It fell out of the top 1,000 in 1972. I think this would be a beautiful character name to all you writers out there. So let's take a look at the girls' names from this period and pick our favorites. So I talked about Helen, Clara, Bertha, Rose, Gertrude, Louise, Josephine, Mattie, Sadie, and Marguerite. My favorite is definitely Rose. I do love Clara and Josephine as well, but I think a lot of these names are quite lovely. Let me know your favorites in the comments below. Now let's take a brief look at what the most popular names of this decade were, the top 10 names. So for boys, number 1 was John, 2 was William, 3 was James, 4 was George, 5 was Charles, 6 was Joseph, 7 was Frank, 8 was Robert, 9 was Edward, and 10 was Henry. So there's just a little bit of changes on the boys list from the previous decade. Edward moved up. It was number 11 before, and it moved up to number 9, and it bumped Thomas out of the top 10. Thomas moved down to spot number 12. The girls list had more changes. So the top 10 names of the 1890s for girls were Mary, number 1, number 2 was Anna, number 3 was Margaret, number 4 was Helen, number 5 was Elizabeth, number 6 was Ruth, number 7 was Florence, number 8 was Ethel, number 9 was Emma, and number 10 was Marie. So some new names that entered the top 10 this decade were Helen, Ruth, Florence, Ethel, and Marie. And the names that left the top 10 because of those were Minnie, Ida, Bertha, Clara, and Alice. I thought that was interesting. Also interesting looking at these two lists is that there are 3 names that were in the top 10 then that are in the top 10 now, and those are William, Elizabeth, and Emma. Quite classic choices, don't you think? I'd love to hear what you think of any of these names down in the comments below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time coming from the 1900s. Bye-bye.